Josie Long.
Hello.
When you were saying about Knox and being a woman, is it still the case that you kind of... I mean, now... I remember when I first sort of heard of you when there was a lot of press around the time that you won the Best Newcomer in the Edinburgh Comedy Awards in the Perriers. And then there didn't feel like there was that many female comics. But now,
But
you know...
do you know what? I don't think that's even really true, because at that time, the people that I looked up to, like Sarah Kendall, Lucy Porter... they were sort of maybe the most prominent ones, but they were really big in Edinburgh. And like Catherine Tate was really big in Edinburgh. Like there were loads of people. And I just think, I suppose the problem is, people our age and younger, you're brought up to believe that you're on a level playing field. And as an adult, you suddenly are brought up to date with the reality of how much you're going to be affected by sexism. And it's just such a shock. Like I came out of university and then suddenly it was like, everywhere, and I was like, and I think that's the problem, is firstly having to accept that it's not yet the case, and secondly having to accept that it does affect you. That was what's been really hard, because I've always thought, oh well, I'm different, I'll be all right, and it's like, no, I won't. People are still going to marginalise me and like be rude to me and patronise me, and then if I try and talk about it, they're going to say I'm moaning, and you know, it's difficult. I think that here's what happened. I thought about it the other day, and I thought, I've been doing this solidly since I was 21 years old, which is 7.5 years. Or if you're a casting director, 1.5 years. And I am, in that time, probably once every, I would say on average, once a day, but just to be conservative, let's say 300 times a year, I've had somebody say to me, there aren't any funny women, are there? Or, well, women aren't as funny as men. Or, I don't like women comedians, or even, oh, I like you, but I don't normally like women. Anything like that, right? Some sort of hint that for some reason they're judging men versus women in the arena of comedy, which I think is ridiculous, right? And then I thought, if I add that up, that's 3 sevens, that's 2,100 times I have been in some way undermined throughout my career that my male counterparts have never, ever had, right? And I don't want to go on about it too much because I find myself talking about it more and more, but like, that's a lot of knocks that you have to take. And to begin with, you don't notice it. And then after a while, you sort of feel like it's your fault. And it's only now that I'm definitely an adult, I suppose, and that I am more confident than I was, that I think, actually, it's just starting to really grind me down now and really get to me. And even talking about it now, I can imagine, because often with comedy nerds, especially, there's some comedy nerds that really can't bear me. But especially the idea of people listening to this being like, I just don't think that's true. And it's like the truth of my experience is I have experienced that much that my friends have not. And that's stressful.
But I think that that's something, like working in the media industry, I do a lot of music industry stuff as well, that I think it's kind of something of the nature of there being less women, so people do that categorisation thing. I spoke to a woman recently who said that there was a bunch of board of directors for one of the big record labels or something like that, and a woman was put onto the board, and she did a terrible job because she was an idiot. And so they sacked her, and then they said, OK, we're not going to employ another woman.
Oh, God.
And it is that kind of thing of like, do you know what I mean? Like that.
But it's everywhere. And also, the thing about stand-up, what I would say is, there's not fewer women than men. If you go to open spot clubs, it's at least 50-50. Is it? It is. It really is. If you go to workshops, it's half and half. Then what happens is, I think people genuinely get ground down. And, you know, in my own experience, I've had jobs that I didn't get, or my friends who are comedians didn't get, but then a model or a presenter does get our place. You know, if you look at a panel show, it'll be like male comedian, oh, female presenter, and it's like, why? Even things like, in Australia, I did this amazing TV show that I loved, which was called Thank God You're Here, where you have to dress up in a costume and you come out and you have to improvise, and it was just so much fun. It was the most wonderful thing. And over here they did it, and when I watch it over, they gave people like Rufus Hound, who at the time was quite an up-and-coming comedian, they gave him that chance. And then you look for his female counterpart and you find Fern Britton or an actor from Coronation Street. And it's like they're willing to give that to men, but to women they're a bit like... Grr. Anyway.
But do you think that, certainly in terms of kind of visible comedians, and I don't know if I'm misguided here, but it feels like there are more women in the comedy mainstream than there have been in the past.
No, that's not true.
Is it really not true? Do you think it's...
French and Saunders and Victoria Wood were the biggest comedians in the country. Like, maybe them and Billy Connolly, maybe. They were really prominent. And I think there were... I just think, if anything, I would almost say in the last few years there's been less women that have actually been really prominent, because if you look at Mock the Week, all the people that got really famous off that were men.
That's true.
And all the big people doing arenas now are men. The only person who's even touching that is Sarah Millican or possibly Shappi Khorsandi, but there's not... And Katie Brand, actually, to be fair, she's doing really well. But there's not that many women who've actually been allowed to break through in the last few years. Not that that's something that I'm seeking, but at the same time, like, I don't know. It's a very long, complicated thing, isn't it?
Okay, so what do you do? How do you deal with it?
I do my own shows about what I care about to people who are very cool and who never, ever... I never feel like on tour that people have weird opinions like that or judge me. I feel like the people who come and see my shows are just great and interested in what I'm interested in, and good laughers and lots of fun. And I also, what I do is I've tried to be more mouthy about it and tried to not apologise as much for talking about it if it affects me. I've not given up, and I know it sounds ridiculous, but like, I've been doing it 10 years and I haven't given up, and I don't want to give up. I just try my hardest, so when people say things which aren't true, which are generalisations, to pick them up on it, which is so tiring. But like, when people go, stand-up's really macho, I'm like, no, it isn't. Or stand-up's a man's game, and he's just like, no, it's not. It's just a thing. But, you know, I think there's a big cultural imbalance towards men, and I don't really understand why